Hello everyone, I'm Adam Harris. I stand here as a Campus Liaison for the Israeli Alliance at McNeese. A few weeks ago I came up here and asked for money in order to go to the policy conference in Washington, D.C. I just wanted to show you a video. This video will serve as somewhat of a report of what happened and an introduction to the resolution that I'll be
It is our honor to welcome you to the 2013 AIPAC Policy Conference.
As a community, we stand together, 12,000 strong, pro-Israel activists from all 50 states.
We stand together, Republicans
and Democrats, each of us committed to a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. Alex and I are here today, along with 2,000 of our best friends in the grandstands.
Together, we represent 449 campuses from all 50 states.
242 student government presidents.
Leaders of college Republicans,
And
Hispanic
college
serving
Democrats.
institutions, and Christian-centered campuses.
Historically black colleges and universities, and leaders of the LGBT community.
So as you can see, it was a very bipartisan event. AIPAC does not stand behind any type of Democrat or Republican. We work together as Americans to strengthen the Israeli alliance. Now last week there was nearly 13,000 pro-Israel activists gathered in Washington, D.C. This year's conference featured Joe Biden, Vice President Joe Biden, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak, House Majority Leader Eric Cantor, and Majority Whip Steny Hoyer. 2/3 of Congress was present and were honored guests at the AIPAC convention. For the first time in AIPAC history, delegates from all 50 states were there and participated in over 533 lobbying appointments on Capitol Hill that Tuesday. This presentation and the resolution that comes after is a reflection and a summation of those 3 days that I had in Washington, D.C. First of all, I want to thank God for all that He's done. Thank you, Mr. Pro Tempore, who's been working back and forth with me all week this week. And to the senators here, thank you for the work that you do, for your commitment to McNeese. Thank you to the staff. Thank you, Terry Dickers, for all your work and leadership and direction. It is an honor to be here, not just as a student or as a citizen of South Louisiana, but as a citizen of the United States of America, and as a human on the planet Earth. These are exciting times, and I believe that we're a chosen generation. I'm disappointed to see that Devontae is not here. I'm happy to see Vice President and Treasurer here. Devontae and I, as most Americans do, agree and disagree on a lot of things. We disagree on most things, most people know that. But one thing that Devontae and I do not disagree on is Israel. As you may know, Devontae is the political advisor for Christians United for Israel here at McNeese, and he has helped me to put together this resolution, and I'm thankful for Devontae's commitment to McNeese and his leadership. He's proven that, continuing to prove that as he's in Washington, D.C. right now, the president of the presidents. Before I continue, I do want to say that on April 30th, we're having a Holocaust survivor. His name is Irving Roth. He'll be here on April the 30th. He survived Auschwitz. I don't know how much you know about the Holocaust, but it would be a great opportunity to come witness and listen to what this gentleman had to say about his experiences during the Nazi Holocaust. As we gather here today, we recognize that Israel and their very existence is a testimony that faith and courage can triumph even in a neighborhood of enmity, constant threat, and terror. Israel's history is that of courageous people and their perseverance against injustice from one generation to the next. It is a history that Americans can understand and that we often look to for encouragement and inspiration. The state of Israel Although besieged by forces of hatred, intolerance, and extremism, has never abandoned its founding principles, nor has it lost sight of its historic mission to provide freedom and a sanctuary in a democracy for the Jewish people in their ancient homeland. Recently, as you know, I was in Washington, D.C., and while I was there, I had the honor of lobbying 4 different members of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Senator Vitter was one of them. We didn't get to speak to Senator Landrieu, but we did talk to David Gillis, our counsel. As you may or may not know, there's an effort going on right now. Israel has found oil and gas, the largest gas deposit ever found in mankind's history, has been found off the coast of Israel, called the Light. Now this is very unique. Israel has never had this type of experience. So they have to learn how to refine gas. Senator Landrieu, when she went over to Israel last year, she told Benjamin Netanyahu and the rest of them, if you want to learn how to refine oil and gas, you need to come down to South Louisiana, because that's what we do. And so we're working hard to bring an exchange program. We will be having students in the next few years come from Israel to here to learn about how to refine oil and work hands-on experience at the plant. And we'll also be sending some of our students over there to Israel to Technion University. This is exciting. Congressman Scalise was another thing we talked to, and I seen Congressman Bustani while I was there. I congratulated him on his victory and said that we missed him last semester when we had a debate. I encouraged him to come to McNeese now that he was elected, and he said that he probably would. And so, one thing that we talked about was McNeese. I did lobby for McNeese while I was there. But more than that, we were there for Israel. We were there to talk about the American-Israel Alliance and the defense of Israel. We talked about those interests and how we have to hold high, not just rhetorically, but actually, the defense of Israel and of its values. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, they all agree, and we too must agree, that nowhere must we be more vigilant than when it comes to the threat that is posed to us by the Republic of Iran. It poses a threat to all of us. You and I know that the stakes have never been higher. And if there's a lesson to be learned about working in the Middle East in recent years, it is that nuances are not only not effective, but they're sometimes very dangerous. We must speak with resounding clarity that the United States will not stand for a nuclear-able, weapons-ready Iran. They must know our full intent and unwavering commitment, from the President of the United States to the Senate, down to the college leaders of the United States. American Israel cannot leave any uncertainty in the minds of those who refer to us as their enemy. President Ahmadinejad of Iran has called the United States Big Satan and refers to Israel as the Little Satan. Let there be no doubt that this is an American direct interest to keep Iran developing a nuclear weapon. A nuclear Iran will set off an arms race in the region, and it would pose a clear and present danger to American troops stationed in the Middle East and in Europe. Not to mention the millions of Israelis and Israel itself. This cannot be allowed to happen. The threat from Iran is not only from its nuclear ambitions, but it's also a long history of state-sponsored terrorism across the globe. The nuclear Iran would be even more deadly than it already was, and more aggressive, using their agents Hamas and Hezbollah to proliferate its weapons of mass destruction. Now, there are some who say Hamas and Hezbollah are only political organizations and that they're just politicians. But make no mistake, they are terrorists for freedom and for security of the Jewish people in this world. You know, Joe Biden told an interesting story. When he was first a senator there, he went to see Prime Minister Golda Meir, at the time she was the Prime Minister. And he went in and he sat in her office, and she started reading all these letters from the 6-Day War. And he said it was really depressing, all these stories he sold with the right and sending. She was just reading one after another, smoking cigarettes. And finally, she out of the blue just kind of said, "Hey, Joe, you want to go take a photo op?" He kind of stunned. He said, "Yeah, okay." Well, they wasn't going to have any commentary, no speaking, nothing like that. But they walked out. It was just a photo op. And when they walked out of the room, she's there, and he's standing here, and there's cameras everywhere, and they're just snapping pictures. And she says, straight face, standing there looking forward, because they're supposed to stay, looking forward to take the pictures. And she says, you know, Joe, don't look so sad. We have a secret weapon. He's thinking, we have a secret. She says, we have a secret weapon in our confrontation in this part of the world. He said he couldn't stand it no more. He turned and looked, and there's still pictures out there of Joe turned and looked at her. And she said, our secret weapon is we have nowhere to go. I think that stands resounding true. Our job is to make sure that there's always an Israel, and that there's always a secure Israel, and that there's always an Israel that can care for itself. This resolution, at the beginning of the resolution, we are expressing support for the state of Israel's right to defend its sovereignty, to protect the lives and safety of the Israeli people, and to express support for peaceful and diplomatic efforts to dissuade Iran from continuing its pursuit of nuclear weapons. We go a couple lines down. It says that whereas in the aftermath of the Nazi-led Holocaust of 1933 to 1945, in which Germans and their collaborators murdered 6 million Jews, and the premeditated act of genocide, the international community recognized the Jewish state that it must gain its independence from Great Britain. In the United States, we were the first nation to recognize Israel's right to exist and their independence in 1948. Israel and the United States have a special friendship that's based on democracy and shared values. Israel is not just a Jewish value. Israel is an American value. If you go to the second, please. A couple lines down. On June 24th of 2010, the United States Congress passed the Comprehensive Iran Sanctions Accountability and Investment Act of 2010 with a vote of 408 to 8 in the House of Representatives and 99 to 0 in the Senate. The SIASTA is a peaceful diplomatic attempt to dissuade Iran from continuing its pursuit of nuclear weapons. And on July 1st, 2010, President Barack Obama signed SIASTA into law. Be it resolved that the McNeese State University Senate, on behalf of the students of McNeese State University, express support for Israel's right to exist, to defend Israeli sovereignty, to protect the lives of its people, and we support strict enforcement of the sanctions placed by the United States Congress and by the United Nations on Iran. Thank you. Military, such things as the Iron Dome system. I don't know if you're familiar with the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome batteries are missiles that intercept other missiles. And similar to the Patriot missiles that we used during the Iraq War. And so the Iron missile system saves lives. Not only Israeli lives, but Palestinian lives. When Hamas will shoot rockets in November, thousands of rockets that were shot into Israel in November, the Iron Dome system would shoot a missile at those rockets and intercept them in midair and knock them out of the air. It works at an 85% rate of accuracy. And so we're saying that we should continue to support Israel's right to exist and to defend itself. It's Iran, and we're also saying that that we support the sanctions that have been put on Iran to try to stop them from becoming nuclear capable.
So basically, we're using U.S. money to defend another nation, basically?
Foreign aid, I'm saying foreign aid. This bill is not about the money that's sent in. This bill is simply about us saying that we agree that Israel has a right to exist and that Israel has a right to defend themselves. In this bill, we're not asking for money. We're not saying that we support the United States giving them money. What we're saying in this bill is that we acknowledge that Israel is a sovereign nation and that they have a right to defend themselves. Yes, sir.
What's the purpose of the bill? I understand where you want to go with it.
Well, I think this is going to set a great foundation. We're not the only university that will have done this, okay? And we won't be the last. However, we are an elite few that are on the front edge of this. What we're trying to do is we're trying to say that we stand behind the President of the United States and the Senate and Congress, and that we support what they're saying, that Israel should have a right to exist, that it should have a right to defend itself, that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. I believe this is going to set the ground for what's coming in the next few years, which is that we're going to have Israeli students here. We're going to have Senator Landry here speaking. We're going to have Congressman Bustani here. And it's all going to be about the Israel-American relationship and the relationship that Israel has with Louisiana and these southern states to help them in the process of becoming energy independent by learning how to refine oil and gas. This is just a step in saying that we are in agreement with the President of the United States and the Congress as a university, and we say that we agree that Israel has the right to exist and that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. It's not only in the interest of Israel, but it's in the interest of America. Israel is our number one ally, the only ally in a region over there where democracy has failed repeatedly. But Israel, over 65 years of existence, they're still a democracy, the only thriving democracy in that area. And they're our number one ally, and some people say it's the aircraft carrier force in the Middle East. They protect a lot of strategic interests. They fight against terrorism.
So where is the bill in the y'all are making like all the universities are getting the bill signed by their president, and you know it's from McNeese and it, so we're behind that.
That's right.
Getting the bill.
Well, the bill will just stay on our books as far as to say that we support it. Now, there are similar bills that are in the state legislature right now, and these type of bills have already been passed in the Senate in Washington, D.C.
So this is kind of like our people's work as a university that we support.
That we're supporting President Obama's decision and the Senate's decision, and we're just echoing that, backing them up. That's correct.
Is it saying that all of them have pieces of an agreement with it, and us new senators make a decision saying what the whole university believes in, or?
Well, I think everybody gets a vote. It's a vote. This is, one of the Democrats, it's a vote. So if your vote is to abstain from that, then that would be your vote.
Any other questions?
Like Congressman, for the most part, that is what we're here for. We are here to vote and support things for the student body, because they're not here anymore. So, yeah.
That's your job as senator.
There is a time and there is Holocaust survivor that have speaking.
Holocaust survivor Irvin Roth will be here on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. in the Old Ranch.
You're coming.
Any other questions for us?
Yeah, I won't have to miss.
Thank you. Go ahead, sorry.
Let's say there's a student or several students or some students from a neighboring country to visit that are in conflict with Israel. Maybe they want to leave that conflict over there and they came here to study and not have to deal with that conflict over there in the United States where they came to study.
Well, that's I understand your sentiment, but I think that we have to realize that America and Israel are allies. And what happens to Israel affects America. And so you're in this nation, and we're affected by it. And as a majority, the United States of America stands up and backs Israel. And I want to say this and make this abundantly clear. I am pro-Israel, but I'm also pro-Palestine. I'm for working for peace. So we're not standing up here saying that no Palestine, no this and that. I'm just saying that we're recognizing Israel's right to exist and to be sovereign. There's a concerted effort by many nations to delegitimize Israel and say that they don't have a right to be there, that they're an apartheid state, okay, and all these things that they say. All we're saying here is that we're supporting Israel. I'm all for a Palestinian solution. If they come up here and they want to present us a resolution that says it's McNeese students, we support a two-state solution for Palestine and Israel to live side by side, I'll vote yes for that. So I'm not against anything about another nation